On April 17, 2018, 16-year-old Jason Cortez walked into the Everglades with his backpack and a camera. A park ranger spotted his abandoned car near a trail entrance, but no sign of the boy. The search lasted weeks, then months. Dogs lost his scent at a waterline. Helicopters spotted nothing in the vast wetlands. Then the case went cold. 3 years later, on June 23, 2021, a fishing guide found a young man huddled in an abandoned hunting shack 30 miles from the original search area. He was severely malnourished, covered in scars, and screaming whenever water touched his skin. When paramedics tried to clean his wounds, he became hysterical. "Don't let it touch me," he repeated. "The water will take me back." The young man was Jason Cortez, now 19 years old. His medical file noted he would become agitated at the sound of running water. He refused to drink anything unless it was from a sealed bottle he opened himself. His physicians noted an extreme hydrophobia inconsistent with standard wilderness survival scenarios. But what happened to Jason during those 3 years, and why he developed this pathological fear of water, you will find out in this video. On April 17, 2018, Jason left his home in Homestead, Florida, at 6:32 a.m. Security footage from a gas station on Chrome Avenue shows him purchasing a bottle of water and a protein bar at 6:47 a.m. The cashier later told investigators that Jason seemed normal, maybe excited, about his photography trip. At 7:15 a.m., park cameras captured his silver Honda Civic entering Everglades National Park. According to the visitor log, Jason paid for a day pass and told the attendant he planned to photograph birds at Anhinga Trail. Jason was a junior at Homestead High School. His teacher described him as a talented nature photographer who often spent weekends in the national park. This trip was meant to capture photos for a school project on wading birds. He told his parents he would be home by dinner, the last. Communication from Jason was a text to his mother at 8:03 a.m. with a photo of a great blue heron. The message read, "Got some good shots already. This place is empty today." Park Ranger Miguel Suarez noticed Jason's car still parked at the Anhinga Trail lot during his evening rounds at 7:40 p.m. With the visitor center closed and no one in sight, he checked the vehicle and found nothing unusual. He made a note in the log, as visitors occasionally arranged pickup from friends after hiking to different trail exits. When the car remained there the following morning, Ranger Suarez contacted Park Dispatch. Jason's parents reported him missing at 9:17 p.m. the previous night when he failed to return home and wasn't answering his phone. The missing persons report hadn't yet been connected to the abandoned vehicle. Once the connection was made, park authorities initiated search protocols at 10:45 a.m. on April 18th. The initial search focused on established trails within a 5-mile radius of Jason's car. Rangers found his backpack approximately 1 mile along Anhinga Trail. The discovery immediately escalated the operation. The backpack contained Jason's wallet, extra camera lenses, a half-empty water bottle, and his phone. The last photo on his camera was time-stamped 11:42 a.m. on April 17th, a close-up of what appeared to be an unusual reflection in the water. The image shows what seems to be a structure reflected in the water, noted the case file. Possibly man-made, though difficult to determine from the angle captured. By April 19th, the search expanded to include Miami-Dade search and rescue, with helicopters, airboats, and cadaver dogs. The search area widened to a 15-mile radius. Dogs followed Jason's scent to the edge of a slough, about 2 miles from where his backpack was found, then lost the trail. According to the handler's report, the dogs showed confusion at the waterline, circling and returning to the same point repeatedly. Lieutenant Carlos Mendez of Miami-Dade Police Department was assigned as lead investigator. With 17 years of experience in missing persons cases, Mendez immediately noted several concerning factors. The subject left behind his identification, phone, and water. This is inconsistent with voluntary wandering or running away behavior. The evidence suggests either foul play or a medical emergency. Underwater search teams found nothing in the slough. Ground teams methodically covered the surrounding sawgrass and hammocks. Thermal imaging detected several heat signatures that turned out to be deer and wild boars. After 9 days, the full-scale search was called off. The case remained open, but active searching transitioned to what the report termed routine monitoring and information gathering. Jason's parents refused to give up. They organized volunteer searches every weekend for months. They distributed flyers throughout South Florida. They maintained a Facebook page and website dedicated to finding their son. As the 1-year mark approached, media interest renewed briefly, then faded again. The file remained open but inactive, classified as a cold case missing juvenile, possible drowning. Then, on June 23, 2021, fishing guide Ramon Vasquez was checking abandoned hunting structures in a remote part of the Everglades approximately 30 miles southwest of where Jason's backpack had been found. He was documenting illegal structures for the Water Management District when he heard sounds coming from inside a dilapidated wooden shack. "I thought it was an animal at first," Vasquez stated in his report, "like a raccoon or maybe a feral dog. It was a whimpering sound. When I called out, it stopped. I pushed the door open and saw something in the corner, a person, all curled up, skinny as hell. When I stepped toward him, he started screaming." Vasquez called 911 at 1:22 p.m. The transcript records him telling the dispatcher, "I found somebody out here, a young man. He's alive but in bad shape. Really bad shape. He won't let me come near him. He's terrified." Helicopter extraction was deemed necessary due to the remote location. The medical report notes that the subject became extremely agitated when the rescue team attempted to secure him for transport. Patient exhibits severe distress at proximity to standing water, screams when moisture contacts skin. The young man carried no identification, but once at Kendall Regional Medical Center, a nurse recognized him from old missing persons flyers. Fingerprint comparison confirmed his identity as Jason Cortez, missing for 3 years and 2 months. Jason's physical condition shocked medical staff. At admission, he weighed 103 pounds, approximately 60 pounds below his last recorded weight. His medical chart documented severe malnutrition with electrolyte imbalances consistent with long-term nutritional deprivation. His vitamin D levels indicated minimal sun exposure over an extended period. His skin showed multiple scarring patterns, including what the examining physician described as restraint marks on wrists and ankles consistent with long-term binding. Most puzzling was his extreme reaction to water. The intake notes read, "Patient becomes hysterical when water touches skin, refuses to shower or bathe, will only drink from sealed containers he opens himself. Extreme anxiety when hearing running water." Jason's parents arrived at the hospital at 7:15 p.m. The reunion was documented in the nurse's notes. Patient recognized parents immediately. Emotional response observed. Patient repeatedly told parents, "I tried to escape and I'm sorry I couldn't get away sooner." When asked where he had been, patient became nonverbal. The preliminary psychological assessment noted Jason exhibited symptoms consistent with severe PTSD, including hypervigilance, dissociative episodes, and specific phobia related to water. He would not sleep unless the door was locked from the inside, and he checked it repeatedly throughout the night. When Lieutenant Mendez arrived to interview Jason the following day, the young man was initially cooperative. He provided what seemed to be a coherent account of his disappearance. According to the transcript, Jason claimed he had wandered off the trail to photograph an unusual bird when he became disoriented. He described falling into a sinkhole or collapsed section of ground, injuring his leg, and being unable to climb out. "I was trapped in this hole," he stated. "It would flood when it rained. Sometimes the water would rise to my chest. I lived on frogs and insects I could catch. I tried climbing out many times but kept falling back in. Finally, the water level dropped enough that I could get out. I've been trying to find my way back ever since." This account initially seemed plausible. Sinkholes do occur in the limestone bedrock of the Everglades. Seasonal water fluctuations could explain the flooding he described. His injuries and malnutrition could be consistent with survival on minimal calories from small prey. However, as Lieutenant Mendez reviewed the medical reports, inconsistencies emerged. The forensic pathologist noted that Jason's muscle atrophy pattern was inconsistent with someone who had been climbing or attempting to escape. His hands showed no calluses consistent with climbing or tool use. His nail beds indicated periodic cutting or maintenance, not years of untrimmed growth. Most significantly, his scarring patterns suggested deliberate, repeated restraint, not accidental injury. Dr. Elena Rojas, the forensic pathologist, noted, "The subject's physical condition is inconsistent with his narrative of wilderness survival. The regular pattern of healing and new tissue formation on the restraint marks indicates systematic, repeated binding over a long period. The patient exhibits nutritional markers consistent with a restricted but regular diet, not foraging." Lieutenant Mendez developed what the case notes term an internal suspicion that Jason might be withholding information. The possibility that he had not been alone in the Everglades had to be considered. The medical evidence suggested someone had kept him restrained, but also provided minimal sustenance. The question became, was Jason protecting someone? A more disturbing alternative presented itself. Could Jason have been responsible for his own disappearance, perhaps to escape from something else? Mendez ordered a comprehensive background check, examining Jason's school records, online activities, and family dynamics for any indication of problems that might have driven him to run away. The background investigation revealed nothing concerning. Jason's academic record was good. His social media showed normal teenage interests. Family interviews indicated no significant conflicts at home. No evidence suggested he had planned his disappearance or had reason to fabricate his current account. As Jason's physical strength improved marginally, his psychological state remained fragile. The hospital notes document his continued extreme reaction to water. Patient became catatonic during standard shower procedure. Required sedation and sponge bath alternative. Continues to check sealed water bottles for tampering before drinking. On the 5th day of hospitalization, a significant breakthrough occurred. A night nurse documented that Jason woke from a nightmare screaming about the waterman. When asked about this the next morning, Jason became agitated and refused to elaborate. When pressed, he stated only, "He'll come back if I talk about him. He always knows." This suggested a different scenario. Jason wasn't lost in the Everglades. He had been held captive. Lieutenant Mendez altered his approach. Rather than questioning Jason directly about his captivity, he focused on the shack where he was found. Was this where he had been kept the entire time? The transcript records Jason's response. "No, that's just where I ended up after I got away. I'd been walking for days. The shack had a roof. I was afraid to go further." "Afraid of what?" Mendez asked. "Water," Jason replied. "He's in the water." When asked to clarify who he was, Jason became non-responsive. The interview was suspended when his heart rate elevated to concerning levels. Two significant developments occurred on day 7 of the investigation. First, forensic analysis of Jason's clothing revealed traces of an unusual chemical compound, sodium hypochlorite, in concentrations consistent with industrial-grade chlorine, not household bleach. Second, examination of the camera recovered with Jason's backpack yielded recoverable data from deleted photos. Among them was a series of images showing what appeared to be a partially submerged structure approximately 3 miles from the trail. The structure did not appear on any official maps of the national park. When shown these recovered images, Jason became visibly distressed. "That's his place," he said. "That's where he keeps them." The statement was immediately significant. Them implied other victims. When asked to elaborate, Jason said only, "I wasn't the first. The others didn't get away." Based on this information and the coordinates extracted from the camera's metadata, a targeted search operation was launched on July 3rd. Aerial surveillance identified an anomalous structure in a remote area accessible only by airboat. The structure was camouflaged with local vegetation, but appeared to be a modified hunting blind built on a limestone outcropping and extending into the water. The approach team reported that the structure was more substantial than it appeared from the air. A concrete foundation with wooden walls, approximately 400 square feet in total area. The building had been carefully disguised to blend with the surrounding landscape. Most significantly, it contained a large chlorinated water tank built into the floor, essentially an artificial pool with a locking, metal cover. Evidence logs detail items recovered from the structure: restraints mounted to the walls, a generator, water filtration equipment, chlorine supply tanks, underwater cameras, and most disturbingly, personal effects belonging to 3 individuals who were not Jason Cortez. Among them was a student ID card belonging to Daniel Martinez, who had disappeared while kayaking in the Everglades in 2016, 2 years before Jason. With this discovery, the case transformed from a missing person investigation to a multiple kidnapping and possible homicide investigation. The evidence suggested someone had been using this remote structure as a base for abducting visitors to the Everglades. On July 7th, with the new evidence, Jason finally revealed what had happened to him. The interview, conducted with a trauma psychologist present, was recorded in a controlled environment after Jason requested the room be checked for recording devices and that there be no water sources visible. According to the transcript, Jason explained that on April 17, 2018, he had been photographing birds when he noticed an unusual reflection in the water. Following it, he discovered what appeared to be an underwater viewing chamber. As he was photographing it, someone approached him from behind. He said he was a park biologist, Jason stated, said they were studying the effects of agricultural runoff on the ecosystem. He seemed normal. He was wearing what looked like a Park Service uniform. He offered to show me the underwater observation post, said I could get amazing photos. The man led Jason to the structure and invited him inside. Once there, he offered Jason a bottle of water. I drank it. It tasted funny, but I was thirsty from walking. Everything got dizzy after that. Jason awoke to find himself in restraints inside the structure. His captor explained that Jason was perfect for the adaptation study. Over the next 3 years, the man, whom Jason only knew as the Collector, subjected him to a regime he claimed would adapt humans to an aquatic environment. The process involved forced submersion in the chlorinated tank for increasing periods, with Jason restrained to prevent escape. The water temperature was gradually lowered over time. The captor meticulously documented Jason's physiological responses, recording heart rate, QC, breath-holding capacity, and skin changes. He said humans would need to evolve to survive the flooding, Jason explained. He said I was helping save the species. He kept records of everything. Measured how long I could hold my breath, how my body temperature adjusted. Said I was showing promising adaptation. The captor maintained a strict routine, with Jason spending hours each day submerged in the tank. Food was provided as a reward for successful adaptations, increased submersion time, or reduced panic response. When Jason resisted, food would be withheld. There were others before me, Jason stated. He showed me pictures, said they couldn't adapt, said I was doing better than they did. Jason's escape came after a severe storm damaged the structure. A section of wall collapsed, and the electrical system failed. With his captor distracted by repairs, Jason managed to break free from restraints that had been weakened by water damage. I ran. I just ran. I was afraid to go near the water, afraid he would find me there. So I stayed inland, moving through the high ground. The transcript notes that during this portion of the interview, Jason repeatedly looked toward the sealed door and windows. Several times he stopped to inspect the water bottle he had been provided, checking the seal before drinking. Based on Jason's testimony and the evidence recovered, investigators developed a profile of the perpetrator. He likely had some scientific background, possibly in biology or environmental science. He would be familiar with the Everglades and have the technical knowledge to build and maintain the specialized structure. The use of a fake Park Service uniform suggested planning and awareness of how to gain trust quickly. The investigation focused on identifying the collector through employment records, property purchases, and chemical supply transactions. Checking purchases of industrial chlorine in the quantities found at the site led investigators to a limited number of suppliers in South Florida. One such supplier identified a regular customer who matched elements of the physical description Jason had provided, a man in his 50s who claimed to be maintaining a private research facility studying climate change impacts. The customer used the name Thomas Griffin and paid cash for his supplies. The address he provided was a vacant lot. However, the vehicle description matched a truck registered to Walter Krebs, 54, who had worked as an environmental contractor with various agencies in South Florida, including a 6-month temporary position with the National Park Service in 2015. Krebs's employment history showed he had worked primarily in water management and environmental monitoring. His last formal employment had ended in 2016, after which he described himself as an independent researcher on social media profiles. His academic background included undergraduate studies in environmental science, though he never completed his degree. What stood out in the background check was Krebs's increasingly apocalyptic online presence. On forums devoted to climate change, he had posted theories about imminent catastrophic flooding that would render much of Florida uninhabitable. He advocated for directed human adaptation rather than technological solutions, arguing that humans needed to evolve rapidly to survive. On July 14th, a surveillance operation located Krebs at a storage facility in Florida City, where he was apparently gathering supplies. When approached by officers, he attempted to flee but was apprehended after a brief pursuit. The arrest report notes that he said only one thing upon being taken into custody: "They need to adapt. The water is coming." A search of Krebs's residence and homestead revealed extensive documentation of what he termed aquatic adaptation experiments. The files included detailed records on 5 individuals, including Jason Cortez and Daniel Martinez. The other 3 were matched to missing persons reports dating back to 2014. The documentation included photographs, physiological measurements, and journal entries evaluating each subject's progress. The most disturbing discovery was a collection of underwater recording equipment containing footage of the subjects being submerged in the tank. The recording showed Krebs methodically documenting their responses, speaking into a microphone about adaptation markers and evolutionary potential. In one journal entry dated February 2017, Krebs wrote, "Subject 3 failed to adapt. Lung capacity did not increase as projected. Temperature regulation remained inadequate. Terminated the study at day 187. Will dispose following protocol. Subject 4, Martinez, shows more promise. Beginning extended submersion trials tomorrow." Forensic examination of the tank structure in the Everglades revealed human remains concealed in a sealed compartment beneath the floor. DNA testing eventually identified them as belonging to 3 of the missing persons documented in Krebs's files. The medical examiner determined the cause of death in each case to be drowning, with evidence of repeated near-drowning episodes prior to death. When confronted with this evidence, Krebs was unapologetic. The interrogation transcript records his explanation: "The flooding is coming. Someone had to prepare the species. Conventional science moves too slowly. I accelerated the process. The failures were unfortunate but necessary data points. The boy was showing real promise. Reduced oxygen needs, slowed heart rate during submersion. He could have been the first. Psychiatric evaluation determined that Krebs suffered from a delusional disorder with elements of grandiosity. He believed himself to be saving humanity by forcing an evolutionary adaptation to an aquatic environment. His delusion had been reinforced by cherry-picked climate science about sea level rise, which he interpreted as imminent catastrophic flooding. Walter Krebs was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of attempted murder, and multiple counts of false imprisonment and torture. He was determined competent to stand trial despite his delusional beliefs. In November 2023, he was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Jason Cortez, the end of the legal process brought no resolution to his trauma. His medical records document ongoing treatment for complex PTSD, specific phobia related to water, and adjustment disorder. 3 years after his rescue, he still cannot shower normally, using only sponge. Baths. He drinks only from sealed containers. He cannot swim or enter bodies of water. Rain triggers panic attacks. Jason's therapist noted in a recent evaluation, patient continues to experience intrusive memories triggered by water sounds or sensations. He reports recurring nightmares where he is being held underwater while someone takes notes on a clipboard. Progress is measured in small increments. He can now wash his hands under running water for brief periods, though this requires significant preparation and recovery time. His parents converted their home's bathroom to accommodate his needs, removing the shower and installing a special low-water use cleansing system. They relocated from Florida to Arizona, partly to remove Jason from proximity to the Everglades, and partly because the drier climate reduced his exposure to rain and high humidity. Jason completed his high school education through online courses. He has begun taking community college classes in computer science, a field he chose partly because it requires no interaction with water. He no longer practices photography. The psychological assessment in his file concludes, the subject demonstrates remarkable resilience in specific areas of functionality, but remains severely impaired in others. His aquaphobia is not responding to conventional exposure therapy, likely due to the extended and extreme nature of the traumatic conditioning. Long-term prognosis suggests permanent adaptation around this limitation rather than recovery from it. During his last documented therapy session, Jason's therapist asked if he ever thought about what happened to him in the Everglades. The transcript records his response. Every day, every time I see water, I feel him watching me, testing me. The doctors say he's in prison, but part of me is still in that tank. That part never got out. The Everglades structure was demolished by authorities after the investigation concluded. The location was not disclosed to the public to prevent it from becoming a macabre attraction. The National Park Service implemented additional safety protocols, including increased ranger patrols and new emergency locator systems for solo visitors. Walter Krebs maintains his delusional belief system in prison. His last psychological evaluation notes that he continues to speak about his research and expresses disappointment that his most promising subject got away. He has shown no remorse and maintains that future flooding will prove him right. For the families of Krebs's victims who didn't survive, the resolution of the case brought answers but little comfort. Daniel Martinez's mother told reporters after the sentencing, "Knowing what happened to our son is somehow worse than not knowing. The monster took our children because of a delusion. There's no sense to be made of it." The case files were transferred to the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program database to cross-reference with other unsolved disappearances in national parks. Authorities cannot rule out the possibility that Krebs had other victims before he established his Everglades operation. The investigation remains technically open for this reason. Jason Cortez's experience has become a case study in traumatic conditioning and environmental-specific phobias. His medical file is used in training for first responders dealing with victims of long-term captivity. His specific water phobia, characterized by both fear and a sense of being watched or monitored when near water, has been documented in psychiatric literature as an unusual presentation of PTSD. On the third anniversary of his rescue, Jason agreed to a limited interview with investigators still working to understand the full extent of Krebs's crimes. When asked what he remembered most clearly from his captivity, the transcript records his response. The clipboard. He always had a clipboard. He would write things down while I was underwater. He would tap on the glass and point to his watch, wanting me to stay under longer. Sometimes I would start to black out, and he would pull me up just before I lost consciousness. Then he would write something down and say, "Progress." When asked how he survived mentally during his captivity, Jason said simply, I counted everything. Seconds underwater, breaths between submersions, days between meals. It gave me something to control." Jason still counts. His current therapist notes that he counts steps between his bedroom and the front door each morning. He counts sips when drinking water. He counts seconds when washing his hands. The counting, the therapist observes, is a persistent behavioral adaptation that gives him a sense of control in a world that proved uncontrollably dangerous. For investigative authorities, the Krebs case highlighted vulnerabilities in monitoring remote areas of the national park system. The Everglades, spanning 1.5 million acres, contains countless isolated locations accessible only by specialized vehicles. The Water Management District has since implemented drone surveillance of known structures and regular infrared scanning of areas not visible from established trails. The Park Service now maintains detailed GPS records of all research structures and observation posts. All legitimate researchers must wear location tracking devices while working in remote areas. But as one ranger noted in the case follow-up report, the Everglades is vast. We can improve monitoring, but we can't watch every acre all the time. For Jason Cortez, the vastness of the Everglades represented 3 years of isolation and torment. Now, even a glass of water can trigger flashbacks to that isolation. His medical file notes that during one therapy session, when asked to hold a glass of water, his heart rate increased to 140 beats per minute. The therapist observed, patient stared at the water as if expecting to see something in it. When asked what he was looking for, he replied, his face. Sometimes I would see his face reflected when he checked my progress. The criminal investigation officially concluded with Krebs's conviction, but the psychological investigation into how a human being can recover from such systematic trauma continues. Jason's case demonstrates the brain's remarkable ability to survive extended torment, but also the lasting imprint such experiences leave. As Jason's current psychiatrist noted in his file, the subject survived by adapting to his captor's rules and requirements. Now he must survive by adapting to their absence. Both processes require significant neurological and psychological adjustment. The difference is that now he has support and safety while making these adaptations. That safety remains relative. Jason still sleeps with his bedroom door locked and barricaded. He still checks sealed water bottles for tampering before drinking. He still avoids news about climate change or flooding. The medical notes indicate these behaviors may never fully resolve. The case file contains a final observation from Jason's therapist. Patient understands intellectually that his captor is imprisoned and cannot reach him. However, the emotional processing of safety proceeds at its own pace. When asked directly if he believes he is safe now, he responded, I want to be. This represents both the ongoing impact of his trauma and the human capacity to envision a different future despite that trauma. His recovery, like his captivity, will be measured in small increments over time.